be screwed, feel my own adrenaline. Yeah, I do just what I do, and I hope you let me in, yeah.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to Cypherfics. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the 6th part of, What If Ichigo Enters Freezing? Special note, this fanfic is written and a masterpiece of Raven 716 on fanfiction.net. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. Nice sword, but how can it fare against me? Ganessa cried as she lashed out her flails towards her with haste. However, all Rukia did was stab the ground 4 times in a semicircle as ice particles began flowing up from the punctures while she takes on an battle stance. Tsugi no mai, Hakuren. Rukia cried as she unleashed a powerful large avalanche of cold air, freezing Ganessa's chains in ice and immediately dematerialized them. The force of Rukia's attack also pushed Ganessa back a few feet while freezing the front of her shirt and shattering it upon impact, revealing her bosom to the world. As she got back up, she immediately covered her chest and glared at Rukia. DMN it. Ganessa growled at the fact that she lost her match within a few seconds. WoW. Yumi Kim was dumbfounded at Rukia's power. Match goes to Rukia Kuchiki. Everyone cheered for Rukia and her new Volt weapon, even Ichigo applauded, which she replied with a wave to him, and then she walked towards Ganessa. Good game, Ganessa. Rukia said as she held out her hand. Ganessa sighed as she took her hand and Rukia pulled her back up. A loss is a loss. Ganessa said to Rukia. Good game, Rukia. Your Sodi no Shirayuki is indeed an appealing Volt weapon. Likewise with your chains. Rukia replied, causing Ganessa to smile a little as the two walked back to the crowd of students. Alright then, time for round 2. Yumi Kim announced. Yoruchi Shihoin and Rana Linchin, come to the center field. Both the Tibetan Pandora and the Flash Goddess both stepped forward to the center field and then took a look at each other. I'm looking forward to a good fight. Yoruchi said as she cracked her right set of knuckles. I can tell you are a strong fighter and I am looking forward to sparring with you. Rana happily replied. Begin. Yumi announced as both Rana and Yoruchi both charged towards each other. Yoruchi's flashback. Yoruchi, I made yours with 7 stigmata implanted into it. Kisuke explained to her. As for your Volt weapon, well, you can see it for yourself, I named it after your signature move after all. He chuckled while covering his face with his fan halfway. Really, Yoruchi said as she looked at her new jigai that Kisuke made, well, I like the idea, plus I would like to see Ichigo again since it's been so long. Flashback ended. As the two charged, both girls cocked their right fists, preparing to punch each other. Then Rana was first to summon her Volt weapon. Volt weapon, deploy. Shurnen. Rana's Volt weapons in the form of armored gauntlets and boots were formed on her hands and feet as she was prepared to make the first move. Just then, she noticed Yoruchi as she smirked. Volt weapon, deploy. Shunko. Yoruchi cried as she summoned her Volt weapons in the form of white arm guards and matching leg armor, both slim and sleek, designed to balance her speed with her offense capabilities. The two immediately clashed as both their cocked fists slammed into each other, causing a small shockwave capable to forming a donut-shaped ring of dust around each other. The other students were covering their eyes from the force the two had made. The two girls smirked at each other as they then began their bout. Blow for blow the two girls clashed against each other's fists and feet in blinding speed. Everyone couldn't even follow their movements except Ichigo, whose eyes was able to keep up with their clashes. Both Rana and Yoruchi then jumped up into the air and both made a high jump kick. Their opposed shins clashed, causing a small burst of wind, and then landed back down on the ground safely while looking at each other, smirking at each other. Rana, because she found a worthy opponent for a friend, and for Yoruchi because of her thrill to fight ever since she fought Suayafeng. Yoruchi, Rana, are you girls alright? Ichigo cried out to them, who were out of breath from the number of matched hits. Yeah, I'm fine, Ichigo. Yoruchi grinned and winked to Ichigo. I'm doing alright, Ichigo. Rana smiled at the young man, who replied with a calm smile as she turned back to Yoruchi, I never expected you to be quite strong, Yoruchi. Hee, likewise. Yoruchi replied as she slowly stood back up. I haven't had a good fight in a while, and I do need a little warm-up. You call that a warm-up? Ichigo thought as he stared at Yoruchi with a deadpanned look. Mamma mia. It seems that we have a tie here. Yumi said. Yoruchi and Rana are tied with 1. Nel and Tia, you're up. The two espadas both walked up to the center of the field and looked at each other, both with determined looks. It was Tia's first time fighting her senior espada, and though she's always calm and level-headed, she's rather excited to fight her. Nel was the same, as she too wanted to see how strong the current Trace espada is. It's going to be an honor to fight you, Nel. Tia said as she prepares herself. Same to you too, Tia. Nel replied as she did the same. Let's make this a good one. As the two espadas looked at each other, they also remembered the time Kisuke made them their gig ace. Nel and Tia's flashback. Alright, for the twin Trace eras, I made your gig ace just as special as the others. Kisuke explained. I gave you both 7 stigmata and your espada rank on your arms. Tia, your mark is on your left arm, and Nel's is on her right. Interesting, but what about our weapons? Tia asked while Nel was gazing at her jigai like a little child in a candy store. Not to worry, Kisuke replied. Once you have your gig ace on, say Volt Weapon, deploy in the name of your weapon. For Nel, it's the name of her special attack in her Resurrection state, and for you the name of your Resurrection. Tia took some time to look at her jigai and how well Kisuke had made it. As she then remembered the time Ichigo invaded the Quincy's hideout and managed to break free both the espadas and Tia's fraction. As a faint blush appeared below her half-closed eyes, she had then made her decision. Very well. I'll gladly accept the jigai. Tia said while she has her arms crossed beneath her endowed bosom and her eyes closed as she turned to the side. Nel noticed the faint blush on her junior's face and smirked at what she thought. Ah, you're doing this for Ichigo, huh? Nel rhetorically said, which made her junior eyes widened and her blush grew darker at the very thought of Ichigo. Ah, I knew it. Tia loves Ichigo. Tia loves Ichigo. Shut up. Tia said to her childish senior, who chuckled as a response. Flashback ended. Alright then, let the third match begin. Yumi Kim announced as the two girls raised their hands behind their backs. The junior espada was first to summon her Volt Weapon. Volt Weapon, deploy, to Barone. Tia's stigmata began to glow and a weapon began materializing in her right hand in the form of a sleeker version of her weapon in her Resurrection state. Everyone, even Ichigo, was shocked to see someone holding a Volt Weapon that's just as big as Satellizer's Nova BLD. Even Tia, who was rather surprised at first but quickly pushed her surprise aside to focus on her match. My turn, Volt Weapon, deploy. Lanzador Verde. Nel cried as her stigmata glowed and her Volt Weapon in the shape of a large double-sided lance appeared in her hand. Nel twirled it around like a baton and then entered her battle stance. Ichigo's jaw was dropped as he turned to Kisuke, who simply waved at the shocked young man. The two girls immediately charged towards each other without hesitation and immediately clashed. Tia began getting the upper hand as her strength slowly overwhelms Nel's until she smirked as she parried Tia's downward strike. Holding her lance like a staff, Nel began fighting back against Tia, matching her move for move. She then jumped back and immediately threw her lance towards Tia, who simply leaned to the left, though it did rip her shirt and exposed her chest to the others and making the red-haired Shinigami nosebleed slightly. Tia then found back as she swung her pita sword, forming a shockwave towards Nel, who simply blocked it, though her shirt was ripped off the same way Tia's did. Ichigo continued to cover his nose, hiding his nosebleed from the other girls and the teacher. "You're not bad, Nel, but it's time we end this," Tia said while she regenerated her shirt. "Likewise, and let's finish this up." Nel agreed as she restored her shirt as well. Both espadas began charging towards each other as they were attempting to end their bout, that is until "Time's up," Yumi Kim said. "The match is tied with Tia and Nelio both with 1 point. Besides, we wouldn't want someone to pass out from either over blushing, or nosebleeding." Yumi Kim pointed towards Ichigo, who was partially hiding from her as he was covering his nose, despite some blood leaking out from his finger blockade. Tia blushed and fumbled her digits while Nel was chuckling sheepishly as they returned to the group. "Wow, Ichigo, you're such a perv." Ganessa chuckled at Ichigo, who whipped off his blood. "Shut up," Ichigo rebuked. "Last match. Ichigo versus yours truly," Yumi Kim announced as she stood in the center waiting for Ichigo to come up. A few seconds after and he arrived beside her. "Are you ready, Ichigo?" "Yeah, I'm ready," Ichigo replied. "Volt weapon, deploy. Get Suro." Yumi Kim summoned her volt weapon in the form of a lance with a blade on the end. Interesting. Volt weapon deploy. Biening Gesuru Redanova. Ichigo immediately summoned his volt weapon, the very crimson blade that slayed 7 novas at once. Everyone was fascinated at the Shinigami's weapon. Ichigo and Yumi began charging towards each other with their weapons tightly grasped in their grips. Just as they were about to clash, Ichigo's right eye caught a glimpse of Kinuya walking across the walkway as he was heading towards his next class. "Kinuya, I see he's back up now." He thought that is until Rukia called out. "Ichigo, watch out." Rukia cried out, which snapped him back to normal until he tripped over his own feet and landed on top of Yumi Kim. Everyone winced and groaned in pain seeing his crash landing. Ichigo groaned as he rose back up and shook his head from the rotten dizziness. Rukia and the girls all rushed to help him. "Ichigo, are you alright?" Tia asked him. "That was quite a spill." "Yeah, I'm fine," Ichigo answered. "Don't scare us like that again, you idiot," Rukia said as she sighed heavily. "What caused you to be so easily distracted?" "I had seen Kinuya heading to class," he replied. "It seems he was coming from Sister Margaret's office since he was in the infirmary." "Oh, thank Kunlun. I'm glad he's up," Rana said. "We must check on him after class." "Okay, then," Ichigo agreed. "But first, can you get off our teacher?" Yoruchi suggested him as he looked at her with a confused look as he was about to get up, until he heard a soft and felt something soft in his right up. He looked down and to his surprise, he has his hand on the Korean's endowed BRST. A blush graced her face as she looked back at the young man for a few seconds. Ichigo blushed a mild red and started gasping for air until a panicked scream was made as he jumped back from her. Yumi rose back up on her 2 feet and turned to the panicked young man who was being comforted by his friends. She started walking towards the group as Ichigo shifted his eyes towards her, coming close. A blush of embarrassment was shown on his face as she stood in front of him. She bent forward and looked at him, thinking she might throw the book at him, but... "You alright, Ichigo?" she asked him as she helped him up. "Why yeah, I'm fine," he shyly answered. "Sorry about the run-in." "It's alright. It's a good thing you're good-looking, Ichigo," Yumi said as she lightly punched his shoulder with a hint of seriousness, "but don't zone off like that again, alright?" "Right, I won't." Ichigo chuckled as he turned away and walked with Rana, Rukia, and the other girls as the class bell rang. As everyone was leaving, Yumi watched Ichigo leave and a smirk was worn on her face. I have to admit, even with my skills, there's no way I could beat Ichigo. She thought as a blush began to form on her face. Beneath that appealing exterior of his face, those eyes, that lean build of his, and that hair, it lies a heart of a man, and the way he touched me, she remembered the minor accident that had happened, her blush darkened. Oh, my. I think I am falling for him. Just then, while the young Korean began to dream Ichigo, he and the others were walking through the halls until he felt a slight chill down his spine, which got the other girl's attention. Something wrong, Ichigo? Rana asked. Someone was thinking about me. Ichigo answered. Really? Nel wondered. Maybe it's your imagination, silly. Same thing happened to Byakuya before I joined here. Rukia said. Perhaps you're just working too strong. Maybe. Ichigo replied. Anyway, let's go check on Kazuya. Right. They all agreed as they continued walking. However, unaware of their surroundings, there was another student who was watching them from behind the left corner of the halls. A young male limiter with gray hair and blue eyes glared at the group, preferably Ichigo. He placed his index to the Bluetooth in his right ear and contacted his Pandora. Messenger to Thunderbrows, the flame MSTR is spotted. He reported. Repeat, the flame MSTR is spotted. Don't call me Thunderbrows. The Pandora exclaimed. Didn't you remember the codenames? It's Thunderbolt. Thunder. Bolt. Get it right, ya idiot. Sorry, princess. The limiter replied. Anyway, I spotted Ichigo Samayu heading towards Kazuya Aoi's location. Good. She replied. The next stage will soon begin. Return to me at once. Understood. He replied as he immediately retreated to his partner's rendezvous location. Elsewhere, the limiter's partner was spying out on Kazuya from the rooftops. She is a well-endowed woman like others, but she has long light green hair, green eyes with prominent eyelashes and thin thunderbolt-shaped eyebrows. Her attire was an entirely customized modified version of her Pandora uniform, similar to Trish Mackenzie's. She wore a typical double-breasted jacket that she keeps tied up and unbuttoned to reveal her midriff. She also has her sides ripped off to reveal her cleavage on all sides. Alongside it was a pair of short shorts which are held by a black belt with a love heart attached to the side. The green-haired girl raised her wristwatch communicator to her face as she contacted her leader. Thunderbolt to Imperial Ice Queen, come in. She said. What is it? She asked. I spotted Kazuya Aoi heading towards the center halls. She answered. Shall we proceed with the next stage of our plan? You don't have to worry. She replied. I already have our fallen angels, Miss Amano and Miss Sakuma doing that for you. You done well, Miss Catnip, you and your limiter return to me at once. Right away, Empress. The green-haired woman replied as she ended her communication seconds as her limiter arrived. The two nodded and then left. At the same time, Kazuya was heading down the center halls, en route to the building's doorway. He still couldn't forget what Satellizer had said as it did dampen his spirits, but just as he was about to head for the door, a pair of hands stopped him roughly turned and pinned him to the doors. You're Kazuya Aoi, am I right? The long-haired woman asked as a calm smirk was made on her face. She and another student both glared down at the young man. The other student was a tall buxom young woman with as long navy blue hair that covered her right brown eye. As for her attire, she wore a customized Pandora's uniform in the form of an open trenchcoat-like top with a wide collar that gives view of her endowed cleavage, a matching miniskirt and wore a gold necklace around her neck. Her eyes glared down at the young limiter while her partner merely smirked. Why yeah. Who are you? Our leader wants to see you. The tall one said. Come with us. Is that a question? Kazuya asked. What if I say no? The younger woman's violet eyes squinted as she glared down at Kazuya. A bluish glow blocked his view, and in an instant, Kazuya was against the edge of light pink double-bladed spear. Now will you come with us, or do we have to get more serious? The younger one threatened Kazuya as he grew intimidated from the two mysterious girls. The older one then grabbed Kazuya by the collar and pulled him against his will. Just as they're getting away with Kazuya, Keiho appeared and she saw what was happening. Hey, what are you doing with Kazuya? Keiho asked. Oh, we're just going to take this fine young man out for a walk. The older one answered, using her silver tongue to trick the young first year. Keiho, help me. Kazuya forced out, which surprised Keiho until the older one immediately punched him into unconsciousness. You leave Kazuya alone. Keiho manifested her volt weapons and charged towards the two, only for the younger one used her no-interval double XL to surprise Keiho and attacks her in an instant. Meanwhile Ichigo with Rukia, Satellizer, Nel, Tia and Yuchi were in his dorm. They were amazed to see how well his dorm was made, compliments of Kisuk. One of his favorite songs from one of his favorite bands was playing on his MP3 player to complement the environment in his room. He has his phone set to his bands in alphabetical order. It was on Fall Out Boy playing their song Immortals. So this is your dorm, huh? Yuchi rhetorically asked as she looked at his music and anime posters, his 70-inch plasma TV, and his collection of anime and movies. I have to give props, you really love music and anime. Thanks. Ichigo said as he chuckled sheepishly at Yuchi's compliment. How much music do you have in that MP3 player? Rukia asked. About 500 songs, over 200 shows and movies and over 1,000 wallpapers. It can also be used as a phone as well. Ichigo answered, which left the girls shocked. Kisuk modified it into this hybrid of a gadget, since he kinda wrecked it. Yep, sounds like Kisuk. Tia said, which made the others laugh. So Ichigo, Satellizer called him while she tries to gather her confidence up. So, how long have you met Rukia and the others, Kisuk, too? Well, we go way back. He answered without telling her of his alias as a Soul Reaper. I lived in Shibuya, close by to Karakura town, so I usually stop by to see him and the others from time to time at his candy shop. Sometimes they needed my help with some errands. You guys seem pretty close, makes me feel jealous, well, a little jealous. Satellizer said while looking down until Nel wrapped her arm around her neck, which got her attention. There's no need to be jealous, Satellizer. Nel said with a smile on her face. We can all be friends, no need to worry. Nel's words were taken into account as Satellizer thought it over. After remembering her first talk with Ichigo, she felt a sigh of happiness and relief flow through her body. Satellizer smiled a little and looked back at Nel. Thanks, Nel. Rukia, Yuchi, Tia, and especially you, Ichigo. Satellizer said, which made the young man blush. Then Satellizer did something neither Ichigo or his friends expected her to do, she leaned in and hugged the young man with her face near his. She was merely inches from kissing him, but her nervousness held her back. Well, it's official, you really are a ladies' man. Yuchi smirked as she wrapped her arm around Ichigo, making him blush even more. She then leaned into his ear and whispered, I wanna have a go with the man who changed West genetics. Her words immediately froze Ichigo as he never expected his Shinigami crush to be crushing on him, that also caused Satellizer and the other girls to be shocked at Yuchi's decision. I wanna have a piece of him. Nel whined like a child. What? You too, Nel? He cried. Ever since you saved me and my friends, I wanted to be with you, Ichigo. Tia said as she embraced him closely with his overblushed face in her cleavage. As Ichigo managed to look up at the blonde-haired Pandora, he was surprised to see her smiling and blushing at him. Halabel, too? He muffled while his mouth was covered in the Espada's cleavage. I guess it can't be helped, Rukia sighed and chuckled until she suddenly saw Satellizer jumping into the random glompfest. I won't lose to you all. My affections for Ichigo is far pure more than yours. Satellizer cried as she pulled him into her and immediately kissed him in front of the others, causing him to be paralyzed in the intensity of affections. Girls. I think Ichigo stopped moving. Or breathing. Rukia said, which made Satellizer pull back from him in shock. Ichigo. Please don't die on me. Satellizer cried as she wildly shook him. Just then, Ichigo's door immediately opened, surprising everyone and waking Ichigo from his unconscious trip. It was Rana while carrying Keiho, who was moderately injured, and the Tibetan Pandora found her. Keiho. Rana, what happened? Rukia asked with seriousness in her voice. Kinuya. He's been kidnapped. Rana answered while Ichigo went to carry her. What? Who did this? Satellizer asked with seriousness in her eyes. It was. The Jaegers. Keiho answered her question as she forced herself up. Ichigo gently pushed her back down. Don't push yourself, Keiho. He said as he stood back up. Now tell me who these Jaegers are. The Jaegers are a group of students led by a powerful third year named Is Death. Keiho explained. She is a SDST and a powerful third year who lacks empathy for weak Pandoras like me and any limiters. Her father's words of honoring the strong over the weak is the one thing she lives for. So she's basically like Ingrid, only more Hitler-ish? Ichigo asked. Summing it up like that, yes. Just like what you said. Keiho replied. Ichigo, you are indeed a strong fighter. You helped stop events happening and brought the light back into those students, but Is Death is in a level of her own. She's dangerous and won't stop any cost to either have you join them, or being killed by her and her team. Ichigo reflected over his battles in the Soul Society, Hueco Mundo, and beyond. He had helped fought against stronger enemies, from the Espadas and Aizen, Yawatch and the Wandenrake, and against the time-bending Mod Soul, Oko Yeshima. He had endured such pain and such limits to overcome his enemies, and that his friends are by his side to help push through the tide of the battle. After he reflected over his past, he tightened his fists and looked at his friends with determination flowing through his eyes. I know I'll overcome this Is Death person and end her plan. Ichigo replied. Tell me where they are and I'll save Kinuya. Ichigo, you got to think this through. Yoruchi called him. Think about it, the Jaegers have Kinuya, and knowing them, they might be expecting your arrival. This has trap written all over this. I understand, but I have to go and save him. Ichigo reasoned with her. Kinuya, Chiffon, Keiho and Satella were the first of many people I became friends with, and I can't just stay here and leave him to his doom. I know you'll do the same for me. Please Yoruchi, you have to trust me. Ichigo, Yoruchi said until Rukia interrupted. Yoruchi. Rukia said. I think we need to trust him. He helped us, Shihoin. It's the least we can do. Tia joined in. Please reconsider. Yoruchi took a deep breath and sighed while holding her head as she tries to think about it. Come on, Yoruchi. Please. Nel asked in a childish manner. Alright, fine. Yoruchi answered. But you're not going in alone, Ichigo. What makes you say I'm going in there alone, Yoruchi? He said with a smirk. We have some of the best Pandoras here in this room. You, Nel, Rukia and Tia. Satellizer and Rana, and myself included. We'll overthrow the Jaegers and save Kinuya. Ya up for it? If it means saving my man of destiny, then I am in. Rana answered. I shall help as well, anything for Ichigo. Satellizer joined in. Then you know that we're with you as well, Ichigo. Rukia said. Then let's get to it. Ichigo replied. After I use my new Irene bar wave. Irene bar wave? They all asked. It the same ability I used to restore Keiho's arms. Ichigo answered. I couldn't think of a name for it until just recent. Oh. They all replied. After Ichigo healed Keiho, she led them to the Jaeger's hideout and to their lack of surprise, it was just as big as the second-year girls' dorm. As they got to the door, Ichigo then turned back to Keiho. Keiho, I want you to stay out here. Ichigo said to her. Wait 5 minutes and if we don't come out, get Chiffon, Kisuke, Sister Margaret or some of the teachers. But I want to help. Keiho cried. I want you safe, Keiho. Ichigo said as he immediately kissed her on the lips in front of the others. After a few seconds, he pulled back slowly and looked at Keiho's surprised look. Now will you please do as I say? Why yes, Ichigo. Keiho replied as she immediately went to hide by the trees. In her mind, she was jumping for joy, now that she finally did something she wanted to do with Ichigo for some time. Yes. I just got my first embrace. And it was from Ichigo. Keiho thought as she quietly squealed. Like I said, you're such a ladies' man, Ichigo. Yoruchi said with a smirk. Anyway, let's get Kazuya. He said as he walked towards the double doors and opened them. I think they just invited us in. Rukia said as she looked around the highly decorated building. Stay on your toes, everyone. Ichigo warned them as they continued walking down the halls from the foyer, looking around for any traps waiting to happen. Oh, I just hope Kazuya's alright. Rana said. I haven't faith in Kazuya, he'll be fine. Ichigo answered until they stopped to hear a muffled sound. That's him, he must be up ahead. Let's go. Ichigo and the others all charged towards the middle doors where Kazuya's at. With a strong kick, he immediately burst the door down and saw Kazuya in the center of the dimly lit room, sitting on a folded chair tied and gagged with a bandana. Kazuya! Ichigo cried as he and the others ran towards him in attempts to free him. He then ungagged his mouth, finally able to breathe. Ichigo! You must get out of here. Kazuya said while Ichigo frees him with his volt weapon. I know, but not before getting you out of here. He replied. No Ichigo, they planned your arrival. All of this is a setup. Kazuya cried as he sensed the doors closed and locked behind him. A feminine voice immediately rang their ears. Weiss Schnabel. An array of large icicles as long as spears suddenly appeared over Ichigo and Kazuya, falling strong and fast towards them. Ichigo immediately used his Excel turn while grabbing Kazuya and evaded each of those with ease until he landed beside Rana and Satellizer. Who's there? He cried as he then heard a pair of hands slowly clapping in the shadows. Bravo! Ichigo Samyu. The female said as she slowly walked towards the center of the dim-lit room. I'm impressed that you're able to dodge my attacks. Weiss Schnabel was by far my fastest attack and seeing your skills in action definitely got my interest. Thank you, but who might you be and how do you even know me? He asked. I see you never heard of me. A tall, buxom woman with long blue hair that extended down past the back of her legs stepped out from the shadows. Her Pandora uniform was different, it was designed in a general's apparel with long sleeves, a blue scarf around her neck with high-heeled boots. Her hat was the only thing that was covering her cold blue eyes until she tipped her hat up. I am called the Imperial Ice Queen, my name is Death. The grin on her face shows that she's calm, but her eyes are a different story. Her eyes are filled with a dark aroma, almost as thick as Kenpachi's Ryatsu. Ichigo and the others all stood their ground while awaiting what may happen next. As for how I know about you, Death slowly stepped down the stairs until she's on the same level as Ichigo. Her eyes had never wandered off, they stayed dead on the male Pandora. Rumors about you spread all around like a plague. Strong, determined, fearless. I like those things about you. Cut the CRP, Death. Ichigo said bluntly, which made her smile turn to a sour scowl. Explain to me, why did your minions kidnap Kinuya and injure Keiho? Is Death stared into Ichigo's eyes and anticipated something she knew he doesn't have, a killer intention. If he had suppressed it, she would have sensed it, but she couldn't sense not even a single ounce of hatred in him. Humph. Volt weapon deploy. Her stigmata began glowing, and in her right hand a saber was formed. Grow horn. Is Death unleashed another attack by she stabbing her volt weapon into the ground. 3 medium-thick pillars as long as the support beams of the mansion immediately sprouted out of the ground below her, aiming for Ichigo. Ichigo reacted by stepping around the first one while manifesting his volt weapon to cut down the other 2. Is Death smirked at him as more ice-speared pillars sprouted instantaneously, the 3 pillars she first made. Ichigo gasped as he didn't have time to react before the spears tries to hit him, until 2 more people immediately came in and destroyed the spears before they hit Ichigo. It was none other than Satellizer and Rana. Satellizer. Rana. He gasped. Are you alright, Ichigo? Satellizer asked him while staring at his Death. Yeah, I'm alright. He replied. Thanks for the save. Not a problem, Ichigo. Rana cried, and then her look was quickly switched to her serious look. Thanks to what Keiho said, we should be at the utmost cautious. I'm impressed that you 3 stopped my growl horn. Is Death said as she looked at the seriousness in their eyes. I can feel the intensity that you 3 have that will make this battle a great one. They're not the only ones, Is Death. Is Death shifted her eyes up to see Rukia and the others with their volt weapons ready. We're here to help them save Kinuya and getting the heck out of here. Is that so? Is Death said as she shifted her sights back to Ichigo. Well then, since you have your team, I'll show you mine. Is Death snapped her fingers and 6 additional shadows appeared behind her, all in single file. With a clap of her hands the dim-lit room brightened up, revealing the team she calls the Jaegers. Ichigo, Satellizer, Rana, all of you. Let me introduce you to my team. The Jaegers. Is Death announced. So this is the big man on campus. Ichigo Samyu, isn't it? The green-haired woman said as she stepped out from Is-Death's left side. Remember me, Candice Catnip. Is-Death calls me Thunder Queen. My name is Puppet Mstr Kurome. The young woman said as she stepped out beside Candice. While wearing the traditional Pandora uniform with a red belt that's with the red side skirt cover, the young second year has short black hair in a twin-tail style. She has red gauntlets on her arms and black socks with matching shoes on her legs and feet. Her volt weapon that was held aloof in her hands was a long katana. Her black eyes stared at Ichigo and the others, but within them were a dark intention. I'm looking forward to seeing how well this Ichigo is. My name is Akim. The Red Demon. Another girl appeared beside Kurome. She has black hair, like Kurome, but it reached down to her knees. Her Pandora uniform was a sleeveless mini dress with a white collar and a red tie. Like Kurome, she has a red belt with a red side skirt cover along with the matching black socks and boots. Her glare was sharp as she looked coldly at Ichigo. Anyone who tries to stop his death, shall be killed on the spot. Akim said. Ah, always so serious, Wani-chan. Kurome said with a small chuckle. Humph, I hate making an impression. Behind Is-Death's right, was another slender young girl with long straight hair. Her Pandora uniform took on the form of a thigh-length trench coat with knee-high boots, a miniskirt and black stockings. Around her waist has a heart-shaped belt buckle with a matching colored hat. She scoffed while looking to the side. Fine. My name is Bambietta Basterbine. The sadistic bomb maker. Just because I gave you my name doesn't mean I will give you mercy. Allow me to introduce ourselves. The violet eyes from the black-haired woman stared down at Ichigo as he glared back at her. I am Rainer Amano, the fallen angel of deception, and beside me is Kalawarner Sakuma, the sadistic reaper. We're the ones who took Kinuya here. I see. Ichigo said while he looked down, his hair covered his eyes as he felt a sign of rage in him. That gives us the more reason to take you all down. Volt weapon deploy. Ichigo's group cried as they unveiled their Volt weapons, Satellizer with her Nova BLD, Rana with Shurinen, Rukia with Sodi no Shirayuki, Yoruchi with Shunko, Nel with Lanzador Verde, Tia with Tiburon, and Ichigo with his Red Nova. Interesting. Is Death said as her sadistic smile was worn on her face as she looked at the seriousness in their eyes. I'm going to enjoy this one bit. This is a fight that's worth dying for. Ichigo along with Yoruchi, Rukia, Tia, Nel, Satellizer, and Rana all stood together with their Volt weapons at the ready as they glared down at Is Death and her team. The blue-haired leader made a cocky grin on her face as she looked down at each of the members, and she finally sees their ki beginning to show. I've been waiting for a fight for so long. Is Death said smugly. Now, I can finally say that we have now gotten ourselves our worthy adversaries. Can the chatter, Is Death? Ichigo rebuked. I already heard from Keiho that you're pretty strong for the leader of the Jaegers. So let's see how skilled you really are. Let's. Is Death chuckled. Kurome, you'll fight the girl who controls ice. Rukia, are you up for it? Ichigo asked. Yeah, Rukia replied as she looked at Kurome with ambition. I think this Kurome girl might be a good opponent to fight against. Good. Ichigo replied. I'll fight Kalawarner. Satellizer suddenly spoke. Kalawarner simply squinted back at her as a response. And this Bambietta should be a fun opponent. Rana added. I'll fight her. Better watch what you said, girly girl. Bambietta said. You might just regret it. Okay then. Yoruchi, who will you face? Candice Catnip, huh? Yoruchi smirked while she cracked her knuckles. Let's see who's faster, me, or her. Heh, I'll take on that green-haired girl. Rainier said as she looked at Nel. However, her smug smirk was quickly turned to a look of surprise as Nel's childish nature was replaced with a look of seriousness. I'm looking forward to breaking those wings, little angel. Nel rebuked, which made Rainier growl. I will face Akim. Tia said. She has a similar aspect than I do. I want to see her aspect firsthand. When I'm done, I'll help you defeat Is Death. Tia halabel. Akim glared directly at Tia with a grim look. I will take you down before you will ever come to help him. Then I'll take you down quickly. Halabel rebuked, making Akim scowl. Alright then, let's take these Jaegers down and save our friend. Ichigo ordered, with his friends charging towards their chosen opponents. About 5 minutes later, after Ichigo and the others have entered the mansion and faced Is Death, a set of running feet and gasps of air were heard all across the school grounds. Keiho was running to find help, while on the run from Is Death's servants, the same trio of second years who were beaten by Ichigo and Rana the other day. Have to find help. Keiho said while gasping for breath while sweat ran down her face in streams. Get back here, first year. Audrey cried while the three girls continued pursuing Keiho. We can't let her get away. Trish yelled as she tries to catch her with her Volt weapons. She ran as fast as her legs could carry her across the red brick sidewalks. It wasn't long until she was captured by them. Audrey then pinned Keiho against the walls, with Trish keeping her still by setting the tip of her twin broadswords against her throat, despite her struggle to break free. Ah, why do a first year like you want to run and get help? Mika said while wearing a smug smirk on her face. Is it because you're weak, or just scared of being beaten by us? Keiho then remembered the times she saw Ichigo has helped out many people and changed the outcomes of many others. She also remembered what Ichigo had told Keiho earlier today. Ichigo, how are you this strong? She asked him. It's not every day we have such strong Pandoras in our school. Come on, what's your secret? It's no secret, I just train every now and then. Ichigo replied with a chuckle. Keiho, you're strong as well, I know that from the first day we met. Ah, Ichigo. Thanks for the kind words, but I'm not strong like you, or Rana, or Satellizer. Keiho looked down. I wish I could, but in the end, I'm not. You already had seen me when those 3 second years attacked us. I couldn't defend Kinuya yet alone myself. Keiho. Ichigo placed his hand on her right cheek and softly caressed it, causing her to blush. I believe that even first years are just as powerful as their seniors. I believe you have something to fight for. It's not the weapon that makes a Pandora strong, nor the amount of stigmata you have. It's the reason to fight for is what makes the Pandora strong. Ichigo. Keiho blushed and smiled. Your time to become strong will come soon, Keiho. Ichigo said as he kissed her cheek. I believe in you. After her remembrance, she stopped trembling and turned towards the 3 second years with seriousness in her eyes, which made the 3 girls stop smirking. Something's different about her. Trish said. Yeah. I don't like it. Audrey added. My reason for getting help isn't because I'm weak, and I am certainly not scared of you. Keiho snapped at the 3 girls, causing them to look at her with wide eyes. It's my job as a Pandora to find and help others, and I don't need any second-year bullies to tell me what I can or can't do. Keiho immediately manifested her Volt weapons and swiftly retaliated them, slightly wounding them and ripping their clothes, causing them to wince in pain a bit and cover their bosoms in embarrassment. Audrey then looked back up at Keiho, who glared at the 3 girls. DMNU. Audrey cried. How are you getting this power? Ichigo. He's my inspiration. Keiho said until she noticed Elizabeth, Chiffon and the other girls returning to their dorms. They stopped when they saw Keiho and the 3 second years, they immediately ran towards the scene of the problem. Keiho. Chiffon cried. What the heck happened? Let's just say these 3 girls needed DSPLN. Keiho bravely replied. I could explain more, but Ichigo and the others are saving Kinuya. They're over at Istetha's mansion. I never expected you to hold your own against them, Keiho. I'm impressed. Ingrid smiled at the young first year, before she turned her attention to Chiffon and the others. Elizabeth, you and Keiho go to Istetha's mansion. We'll stay behind to tend to these 3 and then we'll catch up afterwards with some backup. Good luck getting there, you two. Audrey said, which got her attention. MSTRS's death will take you 2 down without mercy. Not even your playboy of a Pandora, Ichigo, will beat her now. Trish said. I wouldn't underestimate Ichigo Samyu so easily. Elizabeth rebuked. No matter how bad the odds are, Ichigo will overcome them. That's one of the reasons that I love about him. The girls growled as Elizabeth, Chiffon and Keiho both ran towards the direction to Istetha's mansion. Meanwhile, back at Istetha's manor, the fight between Ichigo and his team against her and the Jaegers began, with everyone splitting up to face their opponents in different locations, leaving Ichigo with Kinuya and Istetha in the semi-frozen meeting room. The 2 glared at each other with their weapons firmly grasped in their right hands, waiting for who makes the first move, but for Kinuya, who was by the door watching what happened, felt like hours had passed. Now playing time to attack breakbeat mix. As a piece of ice broke off from one of Istetha's earlier attacks, it slowly fell towards the floor. Once it had hit the ice-covered floor, Ichigo was first to make his move. He ran with his Volt weapon held to the side in the blink of an eye as he closed the distance between them. Just as he came within arm's reach, he skidded to a halt and swung his Volt weapon. Though she had heard of how skilled Ichigo was, it was nothing she couldn't handle. When Ichigo swung his volt weapon, she merely leaned back, allowed the crimson blade to harmlessly fly inches from the tip of her nose, and then tries to attack him by turning her body in a full 360 to lunge her saber towards his chest. Ichigo immediately caught on to her attack and replied with shifting his waist to the left to evade her blade, while using his volt weapon to help parry the blade away. As I thought, he's very skilled, Is Death thought as she regained her poise and retaliated with her swng her blade diagonally towards his left shoulder. He countered by blocking her blade with his and delivered a right roundhouse kick to her left temple. The hit was connected, but she regains her ground after skidding 2 feet away from Ichigo. Just as I thought, you are an admirable fighter, Samuel. Is Death stabbed her blade in front of her and wiped the trail of blood off the left corner of her lip. You're leagues above the untouchable queen and that Tibetan girl, just like those 3 second years you met had mentioned. Ichigo's eyes squinted as he now knows those 3 girls he met works for Is Death. Therefore, I have a proposition for you. A proposition? What are you getting at? Ichigo asked as he lowered his guard. Is Death knows that he could anticipate what move she could make, so she lowered her guard as well to relax themselves in the tide of battle. I wish to appoint you to be my co-captain of the Jaegers, Ichigo Samuel. Is Death announced. With your powers we'll rule this school. Screw that, I'm not buying your excuse. Ichigo rebuked, not wanting to hear the rest of her offer. Hear me out, Ichigo. Is Death interrupted and continued explaining. As an offer, we'll let Kinuya go. All you needed to do is give up your trivial pursuits such as protecting some weaklings like Kinuya or that Keiho kid. Can't you see that they're holding you back? It's the weak that are destined to lie beneath the boots of the strong in this school, and those that can't accept that are meant to be just easy prey for the novas. That, my friend, is survival of the fittest. Ichigo could just flat out say no to her, but her offer is very well beneficial. He knew that Kinuya would be safe if he chose to join her, but doing so means not just him, but his friends to give up their honor as Pandoras and swear allegiance to Is Death. His choice was clear and he knew what he wants to say. To join you means giving up my reasons to become a Pandora, along with Satellizer and Rana to give up their honor that makes them strong? I say. To hell with your offer, Is Death. Is Death was stunned that Ichigo would blow off her offer after everything she wanted to give him. I have a really bad problem with people with power swaying others to join you. It sickens me completely. After what you've done to Keiho and insulting Kinuya, I will never join with someone like you. Is Death's eyes were covered by both her hair and the visor of her hat. The grip on her saber has tightened to the point that he could hear the hilt creak from the pressure, and an aura of pure evil began seeping out of her like a dark fog. The only thing that's revealed within the aura was a wry smile. So that's your choice, Ichigo. Is Death muttered aloud as she made a small chuckle. Very well then. There's only one thing I can do now, and that's to kill you and your friends for defying my offer. I'll make your deaths a slow and agonizingly painful moment I'll never forget. Is Death chuckled menacingly as she immediately charged towards Ichigo with her intent to kill as an aura of ice enveloped her blade. Ichigo growled as he immediately prepared for what's about to happen. He gripped his weapon tightly in his grip and readied himself. Flames were enveloping his blade as he charged towards her. The two clashed as streams of ice and flames were scattered all across the room. Song fades. Meanwhile, Rukia traveled through the endless maze of toys in search for Kurome. After experiencing her trip to the toy world during her bout with Rukia, Rukia became more aware of what things might come for her. Little did she know, a few plush dolls were spying on her preparing to attack. The first was a brown bear that wears a black top hat and bow tie. Its light blue eyes were lightly shown from the shadows. After a few seconds, when Rukia turned around the corner, he then called out 3 more dolls to join him. A faint chuckle was made as a lavender-colored bunny with maroon eyes and a red bow tie which was partially obstructed by his chin. Beside him was a bright yellow anthro chicken with black eyebrows, magenta eyes, and wore a white bib that reads, "Let's eat." Lastly, a crimson-colored fox with a black eye patch over his right eye and a hook for a right hand joined them. As Rukia was walking deeper into the toy maze, she stopped as she heard faint squeaky steps slowly approaching her. She held her volt weapon tightly and waited to see what will happen next. A second after, a wall of toys began tilting over, her intending to trap her in the debris. However, she immediately dodged the falling toys by using her Excel turn to run to the far corner of the wall. Before she could sigh in relief, the fox immediately made an attempt to strike down a Rukia while her guard's down. Rukia noticed the doll diving at her and countered with leaning to the left, watching the fox fly by her, and then sliced the doll, head first, in half. "Ah geez, here we go again," Rukia said aloud as she looked around for any opposing enemies other than the fox she sliced in half. Her instincts were right as the bear, bunny and chicken all rushed in to attack her. The first move was made by the chicken as it charged towards Rukia while carrying a fork and knife in its hands. Rukia simply made quick haste to the doll by slicing off the head and arms. Her attack enraged the bear and bunny as they went in to fight her as a tag team, only for Rukia to freeze them with her volt weapon's power. "I'm impressed with your skills, Snow Girl," Kurome said as she appeared behind Rukia with her volt weapon in her hands. Her choice of a volt weapon was a katana with a red-crossed tsuba with a black hilt. On it has the name of her weapon etched on the white stripe on both sides of the hilt with a red tip on the bottom of the hilt. "You're very agile for a young woman." "Thanks for the compliment," Rukia replied while she held her sword tightly. "I'm assuming that sword of yours is the reason those dolls are moving on their own." "That's right," Kurome answered as she held out her weapon to Rukia. "Yatsufusa is the name of my weapon. With it, I can turn any inanimate object I see or want into my own personal toy. Empress's Death got me these dolls and stuffed animals so that I can play and hone my skills." "I can see that," Rukia answered. "Heh, since my dolls love you, I'll give them a chance to fight you again, only this time it's fight until you drop," Kurome said as she raised her volt weapon up over her as it began glowing a dark red aura, causing her dolls to reform themselves until they were whole. Rukia sighed in disgust as Kurome's dolls stood in front of her with their musical weapons in hand and an army of killer dolls beside them. "Oi! Where were Ruka when you need her?" Rukia muttered as Kurome's dolls immediately charged towards her. Elsewhere, Satellizer and Nel are both out back. Nothing but trees all around the moonlit area as the two Pandoras traveled deeper into the darkened forest. As the two progressed, slashes made of pink and yellow lights were falling down on them. Satellizer and Nel suddenly caught on to what's about to happen and deflects them all with her Lanzador Verde. "Thanks for the save, Nel," Satellizer answered. "You're welcome," Nel replied as she looked around, catching their presences until she turned to her top left. Both Rainier and Calawarner looked down at the two girls with their choice of volt weapons. Rainier has a light violet double-edged spear with a pink hue emanating off the edges of the blades. Calawarner has a golden double-edged spear, though it's sharp, one side was jagged. "So, you're friends with that Samuel kid, huh?" Rainier rhetorically asked. "I never expected a powerful man like him to have such friends like you and don't take advantage of his essence. I think they're too scared to handle someone like Ichigo." Calawarner joined in with a smirk on her face as she placed her left hand on her hip. "I can tell just by looking at him that he's very strong. If Empress's Death didn't pick him first, I would like to give the boy a good time. I highly doubt he would go with such harlots like you too." Satellizer rebuked, causing the girls to cease smirking. "Do you even know who you're talking to?" Rainier asked with seriousness in her voice. "No, and we don't even care," Nel calmly rebuked, making the two fallen angels' faces squint in anger. "Whether you're with his death or not, you're an enemy and enemies must be dealt with." Rainier's grip on her weapon tightened for a second, then she along with Calawarner charged towards Nel and Satellizer. The four clashed and sparks of many colors were made all around the forest. Just within that very second, Satellizer performed a double acceleration to surprise Calawarner and succeeded with a downward slash against her, sending her flying back first into the ground. Kala. Rainier growled as she turned and glared to Satellizer, who simply glared back for a second. As Rainier charged toward Satellizer with her light staff in hand until Nel appeared and clashed blades with Estetha's commander. "Your fight is with me, not with her," Nel said as she immediately pushed her back with immense strength. The green-haired Espada charged towards Rainier as quick as she can and swung her lance upward in an attempt to strike Rainier, but the Jaeger's commander immediately parried the lance away and tries to impale her staff through Nel's chst, only for her to use her Excel turn and smacked her from behind into a tree. Calawarner quickly got back up and charged towards Satellizer and the two clashed. Each of their moves were evenly matched without any sign of slowing down. After one more clash, the two stood their ground. "I admit, you are indeed strong for a junior, untouchable queen," Calawarner said as she prepared herself. "But, it's not gonna be enough to take me down. We'll see about that," Satellizer said as she gripped her Nova BLD tightly. "It's time I don't hold back. Let me show you what I learned from my training with Ichigo." Elsewhere, Yoruchi was fighting against Candice on the rooftop. Candice's choice of volt weapons was a pair of white gloves, matching ankle-length boots with the lightning bolt marks on it and wings made of lightning, which she calls it, the Thunderbolt, giving her the power to manipulate and launch strong bolts of electricity. However, due to Yoruchi's immense speed from her Shunko armor and her Excel turns, makes her evasions against strong attacks simple easy. Seeing that happen, made the Thunder Queen pissed off. "You insufferable beach. Why can't I hit you?" Candice cried while she balled her fists and slammed them on her sides. "Ah, what's the matter, Queenie?" Yoruchi teased her while she has her arms crossed under her large assets. "I'm not even warmed up and yet you can't even hit me. I must say, your skills are getting very sloppy." Candice growled at Yoruchi's response. Her teeth were gritted and sparks of electricity were emanating around her hands and arms. Yoruchi chuckled calmly at the look Candice made. "Geez, girls today are all talk and no muscle." Yoruchi continued. "They say they're tough, but don't show it. Honestly, I feel rather embarrassed for facing an opponent who talks the talk, but doesn't have the bite to go with the bark. DMN. I won't take this coming from someone like you." Candice growled menacingly like a rabid cat at Yoruchi's remark. She then resorted to using one of her special attacks. She raised her hand out in front of her and used her electricity to manifest a lightning bow. She pulled her other arm back as she aimed at the flash goddess. "Let's see how well can you dodge this." This attack has the power of a 5 gigajoule lightning bolt, more than enough to blast you to dust. Galvano Blast. As Candice released her bow, a barrage of arrows shaped like lightning bolts were launched like missiles flying in supersonic speed. That attack did surprise Yoruchi a little, but it's nothing she couldn't handle. She jumped into the air and vanished seconds before Candice's attacks hit the area. Candice smirked thinking that her attacks had hit her, until she heard a sigh coming from behind her. She turned only to see Yoruchi and scathed. "Is that all?" Yoruchi scoffed. Candice growled while she tightened her fists in a fit of rage. Seeing how Yoruchi's speed outclassed her abilities, she decided to do the next best thing. "Why you?" Galvano Javelin. Candice manifested a javelin of lightning and immediately threw it towards Yoruchi with immense speed. Yoruchi smirked and sighed as she used her Excel turn, only for Candice to reappear behind her using her lightning jump. Yoruchi was surprised at what had just happened, and before she could react, another of her Galvano javelins were formed and thrown at close range, hitting Yoruchi, and an explosion the size of a tree was made. Candice smirked as she watched the explosion, thinking Yoruchi was dead. "How did you evade my attacks?" Candice cried. "There's no way you could evade it with your Excel turn, would have sensed it on the spot." "Then you should have paid close attention." Yoruchi chuckled. "What I did wasn't an Excel of any kind. It was Shunratsugeki." It allowed me to evade your attacks in supersonic speed. Now it's my turn. Tempest turn. Yoruchi kneed Candice in the chin, lifting her into the air for just a second, only for the green-haired girl to receive a barrage of rapid punches all around her that Yoruchi calls Muso Renbu. Yoruchi's punches lasted about 30 seconds, until she landed the final blow on her chst, sending her flying into the forest, nearly 5 feet away from the manor. DDMN, her. Candice growled as she struggled to get back up. I am not done yet. Candice struggled to get back up, but the beating she got taxed her severely and with that she passed out. Oops. I think I overdid it, a little. Yoruchi said while brushing the back of her head while chuckling sheepishly, feeling embarrassed of herself a little. I better go find the others. They should be done with their matches by now. Meanwhile in the backyard maze, the Tibetan Pandora was struggling a little against the bomb-making Pandora named Bambietta. Her Volt weapons was simply silver gloves on her hands, which she calls, the Explode. She held her right hand out revealing star-shaped marks in the middle. With a sadistic smirk, she channeled her energy through from her stigmata into her hands, then with a wave of her hands, she releases a barrage of 10 energy ball, each with the blast force of 10 cannonballs. Rana used her Excel turn to evade most of her attacks. What's the matter, girly girl? Bambietta said with a smug smirk on her face while launching her barrage of energy balls she calls, bomber shells, towards her enemy. You said that I was a fun opponent. I guess I am too much to handle after all. Although I'm having a blast. Bambietta's pretty skilled with her Volt weapon. I have to find a way to get in close. Rana thought while evading each of her attacks. She continued pondering until she scanned the area closely, looking for an opening. Just then she encountered a small opening in Bambietta's barrage. Got you. Rana immediately used her fastest Excel turn and emerged beneath Bambietta, surprising her. With her speed, Rana immediately landed a barrage of punches on the bomb maker, just like her sparring match against Yoruchi. After one final kick on her left temple, Rana sent Bambietta flying through 7 walls of bushes until she landed, head first into the ground. Rana was breathing heavily while watch what's going on, until Bambietta slowly began to get back up like nothing happened. She brushed the dirt off her uniform and wiped the BLD off the side of her head. Rana stood her ground and prepared for what may happen next. I guess I underestimated you, little Tibetan. Bambietta admitted. You really know when to pull your punches and when not to. Now, I won't have to hold back. Rana was surprised when Bambietta was holding back all this time. Bambietta immediately used her Tempest turn which made 5 copies of herself as she charged towards Rana with immense speed. As she got close to her, she connected a heavy punch to Rana's stomach. She smirked as she followed up with a barrage of punches that were just as fast as her bomb barrage and finished it off with a cobra strike at her chst, sending her through 5 walls of bushes until she landed, back first onto the ground. Rana slowly rose back up, only to see Bambietta preparing her attack. She held out her hands and 2 orbs of light, slightly bigger than her hands were formed. She smirked as she finished charging her attack. Good luck blocking this one. Bakugeki bombing raid. Bambietta raised her hands into the air and fired her attack. Multiple bombshell orbs of energy were shot 3 feet into the sky, only for them to return down towards the young Tibetan with double the speed. The second the first few landed around her, they began to explode. Rana immediately dashed towards her hoping she'll make another hit within the opening, only for Bambietta to lower her right arm down and prepares to fire one of her bombs. Knowing she will take some damage, Rana went through with her attack. She cocked her fist back and just as Bambietta fires one of her bombs, Rana clashed it with her fist with equal force, causing the bomb Bambietta fired to explode. The bomb maker covered her eyes from the smoke, only for Rana to appear behind her. By the way, do you know when to plan a counterattack? Rana asked while smirking, surprising Bambietta. It's after surviving your opponent's attack. Rana landed a heavy punch into the bomb maker's stomach, sending her flying towards the trees. Before she could get time to recover, Rana charges in while using her holy gates. The young Tibetan immediately entered her Tempest turn, creating 3 copies of herself and spun around Bambietta, confusing her until she charged in and began beating her like a rag doll. After her 10-second barrage, she then reappeared in front of her with her fist in front of her stomach. Burning Fang! Rana cried as she releases a torrent of thermal powered energy through her, crushes her ribs and damaged her organs. Bambietta coughed out some BLD as she struggled to stand while glaring at Rana. DMN. Bambietta muttered as she fell back and passed out. Sorry, but you brought this to yourself. Rana stood back up using willpower alone. She turned and started walking out. It's been fun, Bambietta, she said while she deactivated her Volt weapons. Elsewhere, Tia and Akim's fight went into full swing with the two of them in their Pandora modes. Halibel's Pandora was her resurrection form, a bone-like collarbone with extensions that did little to hide her melons, shark fin spalders on her shoulders with protrusions on her back, and a thin spine-like structure that ran down her stomach. She also wore a miniskirt made of bones and knee-high boots. Akim's Pandora mode made her scaras turn black and her pupils glowing red. Red tribal markings appear around her body and a dark ghastly aura enveloped her and her Volt weapon. The two clashed all across the poolside. Sparks of yellow and red were made all around as the two were fighting while using their double XL turns. After one immense clash, Tia and Akim were merely a few feet from each other, their uniforms slightly ripped, little scars were shown and sweat was formed on their eyebrows. I underestimated you, Halibel, Akim said while staring at her with her cold eyes. Your skills are rather remarkable, for someone wielding a big sword. Likewise with your skills, Akim, Tia replied. Your Volt weapon is rather strong, Murasame, am I right? Yes, Akim said as she looked at her Volt weapon. Her weapon was a normal katana but with a red hilt, matching red prongs, and the name of the weapon written on a white stripe in katakana. Murasame is strong, because of its ability to kill someone with one hit. The poison within the blade when it strikes an opponent seeps into its heart, killing them instantly. I do admit with each of those small scratches, I would think you would die from my attacks early on. It's going to take more than a little poison to kill me, Akim, Tia rebuked calmly while her eyes squinted at her. These scratches don't mean anything to me. Once a shark finds its prey, it'll do everything to tear its prey up until it's consumed. You are my prey and for that, you shall fall, only then I shall help Ichigo fight your leader. Akim squinted her eyes as she readied herself, she entered another stance with her weapon at her side pointing at Tia. While the latter applies to Tia as well as she stood her ground while holding her weapon out to the side. The two exchanged looks before they charged towards each other. Here I go, Akim, Tia said. Eliminate, Akim coldly said as she and Tia entered another Tempest turn. The two clashed in supersonic speed while being in their Pandora modes. Sparks of gold and crimson struck all around the pool like fireworks on the 4th of July. Tia and Akim fought relentlessly, matching blow for blow, wound for wound. Tia and Akim fought their best. The Shark Empress knows Akim is strong, but it's time Tia ends this fight. After the two came out of their Tempest turns, Tia immediately slammed her with her Pita sword sending Akim a few feet away. She then raised her Volt weapon while pointing towards Akim, with a brief glow, a small portion of water the size of a disco ball enveloped the blade of her weapon. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 7. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author Takamagara 2012 on fanfiction.net. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video, till then goodbye.